chosen one, God made a declaration over your life today. Not a wish, not a blessing sent into the air in general terms, but a sealed, permanent declaration written into the eternal record with absolute precision. Your name is on it, and everything God has watched you carry is attached to it. What that declaration says is this: you are my strongest warrior. I know what rises in you when you hear those words. There is an immediate instinct to inventory everything that feels like evidence against it, to count your flaws, your tired moments, and the times you felt completely broken. But what God declares is not built on how things look from inside the heat of the battle. It is built on what heaven has watched you become through everything the outside world never saw. The battles that targeted you were not random occurrences. The formation that lasted longer than it did for those around you was not a cosmic oversight or a mistake. The seasons of deep silence that tested the deepest layers of your faith were not signs of abandonment. They were the specific curriculum that only the strongest warrior receives, because what you were being built to carry required what no easier path could ever produce. The prophecy has been true about you since before you even knew your own name. God, having witnessed the full record of what that prophecy has built in you, is no longer keeping the declaration hidden in the courts of heaven. It is here, it is for you, and you were made specifically for this moment. There is a way this deep knowing has been speaking to you before today, not in loud or disruptive voices, but in quiet, persistent patterns that most people in your life have absolutely no framework to understand. Before anything else opens up in this message, these patterns deserve to be named clearly because they are the signature marks of a soul whose formation has reached a critical point of completion, and because they have been misidentified for too long as personal problems rather than as divine evidence. The first pattern is the way that ordinary things have completely stopped fitting you. The places you once moved through comfortably have started to feel like rooms constructed for someone much smaller than what you have become. Conversations that once held your attention have grown hollow at a depth you cannot always explain to others. You have sat in gatherings where everyone around you appeared to be completely satisfied, yet you felt the particular ache of someone who knows, without being able to fully articulate it, that they belong to a different kind of depth. This is not restlessness born of pride or arrogance. This is the heightened discernment of a soul whose frequency has been rising far above the environment that once contained it. The strongest warriors cannot remain comfortable in spaces that are too small for what they are being built to carry. What has felt like painful disconnection is actually your spiritual discernment arriving in its full capacity. The second pattern is a restlessness that does not have a formal name yet. Something deep within you wants to build, wants to create, and wants to bring into the world something that has never existed before in the specific form that only you can give it. You feel it most acutely in the quiet hours of the night, when the heavy demands of the day fall away, and the deeper current beneath your life becomes audible again. That heavy pull towards something larger, something that would require absolutely everything you have and then ask for even more, is not ambition misidentified. It is not mere dissatisfaction with the present moment. It is the creative mandate of a soul assigned to leave something permanent and beautiful in the world. The strongest warriors do not only fight battles, they establish territory. They create lasting structures of light in the world that far outlast their own lifetimes. What you feel in those quiet moments is not a distraction from your calling. It is your calling reminding you that it is still waiting for you to step into the fullness of it. The third pattern is the sudden precision of the signs that have found you across the years. At specific moments, often the moments of greatest uncertainty or greatest decision, something arrived with a timing that completely defied ordinary accounting. A number appearing at the exact hour you were questioning whether any of it was real. A phrase spoken by a complete stranger who had no way of knowing what you needed to hear, or a coincidence so architecturally perfect that calling it a coincidence required more faith than acknowledging it as direct contact from a source that was watching you far more closely than you had allowed yourself to. Believe these moments were not self-generated. These were divine coordinates placed at exact intervals by the same intelligence that has been tracking your life since before your name was given to you. The strongest warriors receive the most active guidance because the mission they carry requires the most precise navigation. The fourth pattern is the quality of what has arrived in your sleep. Not every dream, but specific, weighty ones. Dreams so emotionally precise, so architecturally complete, and so saturated with a knowing you could not have manufactured while awake, that you rise from them carrying information you did not go to sleep possessing. Something was shown to you in those moments, and something was settled in the language of the spirit, in the one space where the noise of ordinary life could not follow. These are not random signals from an overwhelmed mind. They are active preparation. They are the form of instruction that has always been used for the warriors whose waking hours were too full of physical formation to receive what needed to be transmitted through another channel. The fifth pattern is the weight you carry that has no ordinary accounting. Not the exhaustion of too much work, nor the tiredness of difficult relationships, but a bone, deep weariness that is entirely separate from all of that. It is a tiredness that belongs to someone who has been holding something enormous in prayer, in faithfulness, and in expectant waiting for longer than the body was designed to sustain alone, without visible evidence that the holding is actually working. This is not a health problem, and it is not a faith problem. This is the signature weight of a warrior in active spiritual formation, carrying more than the visible dimensions of their life can contain or explain to others, and it is one of the most specific indicators that your formation is close to its completion. Beneath every one of these signs lies a single truth, a truth that has been misread in your life so many times that it has cost you seasons of peace you were fully entitled to keep. The opposition you have faced was not accidental. There is a direct and measurable relationship between the weight of an assignment and the intensity of the warfare that arrives against the soul who carries it. This is not comfortable to say in most settings, but it is deeply structurally true, and the strongest warriors are the ones who paid the highest price for not understanding it early enough in their formation. When God designates a soul for an assignment that carries generational weight, heaven does not assign that soul a proportional amount of testing. Heaven assigns a disproportionate amount not to destroy you, but to produce the specific quality of strength that the assignment requires and that no lighter process can ever generate. The fire that builds a weapon is not the same fire that warms a room. The two fires look nearly identical from a distance, but only one of them produces something capable of holding an edge through decades of sustained use. You have been in the hotter fire, and you have not only survived it, you have been shaped by it in ways that are becoming more visible the further into this message we go. Every season that lasted far beyond what felt reasonable, every door that refused to open, every person who left when staying was what the story seemed to require, and every promise delayed past the point of what felt survivable. These were not evidence of divine neglect. They were the curriculum, the specific intentional design of a formation built to produce the strongest warrior for the most exacting assignment. The darkness does not organize against a soul that carries nothing worth contending for. The precision and the persistence of the opposition that has followed your life across the years is itself a grand testimony. It has been telling you in the only language opposition can speak exactly how much you are worth defending and exactly how significant is the thing that was designated over you before your story began. Breathe once and let what just settled in your spirit have a moment before the next layer opens up to you. There is something I want you to hold before we go further, not emotionally or theoretically, but in the actual structure of your understanding. Because there is a question that has been sitting in the background of your experience, maybe for years without a name that fit it, a question about why your mind, for all that it is capable of, and all that you know it was built for, has not been running at the full capacity you remember from earlier seasons. It feels as if something that was once lit is now dimmer, as if access that was once available has been quietly narrowed. A small group of neuroscientists led by a doctor working in the northeast of this country spent years studying exactly this question, not philosophically, but clinically, with the kind of rigor that produces Nobel Prizes. What they found was that the brain most adults carry into their daily lives is operating at a fraction of its designed capacity. This is not because of age, and not because of a lack of effort, discipline, or intelligence, but because of a systematic suppression that begins earlier in life than anyone in a position of influence wanted to acknowledge. This suppression accumulates gradually across the years, replacing the whole brain operation that was standard in childhood with a narrow, survival-focused mode that most people eventually accept as their permanent normal. What they also found is that this suppression is not permanent. There is a way to restore what was lost, something far simpler, far more accessible, and far more grounded in verified science than anything the popular imagination has offered on the subject of mental restoration. I will show you what they found, but the foundation for why it matters for someone like you is what everything in this message is building toward. The information is in the description and the pinned comment below, and it will make complete sense once the full picture of what is happening in your life has been seen. In that silence where the first truth settled, a second one begins its arrival, a deeper layer than recognition can hold alone. This is the layer of the forge itself, and of what the forge was building inside you. There is a reason that the greatest warriors in every tradition, in every culture, and in every documented era of human history emerged from seasons of profound wilderness. They did not emerge despite the wilderness, they emerged because of it. The wilderness is not a waiting room. It is not the interlude between the calling and the fulfillment where nothing of importance is happening, and the years are simply being passed away. The wilderness is the primary production facility. It is the place where the qualities that distinguish a warrior from a soldier, a carrier of destiny from a carrier of talent, and a leader of actual transformation from a manager of existing systems, are forged into the permanent character of the person who will bear them forward into the assignment. Consider what happens to raw iron when it is placed in a fire that exceeds its melting point. Every single impurity in the metal rises to the surface. Every inconsistency in the structure becomes visible and is addressed. Then, under sustained heat and the application of precise force, the iron is restructured at its molecular level. What emerges from the process is not what went in, it is steel. It is the same material reconstituted through the exact conditions of the forge into something categorically stronger, more precise, and more capable of bearing sustained weight than the raw iron that entered. The forge does not destroy the iron, it completes it. You have been in the forge, not metaphorically, but in the forge of actual spiritual formation, of actual loss, of actual faithfulness, and of actual endurance through seasons that most people in your circle were never asked to walk. The length of your season in the forge is not evidence that something went wrong or that you were forgotten. It is evidence of the grade of steel being produced. The strongest warriors are not produced quickly. They cannot be. They are produced through sustained, thorough, and precise formation that ordinary timelines cannot accommodate, because what they are being built to carry cannot be entrusted to a soul that has not been fully formed to bear it. There are things the wilderness forges in the soul of the strongest warrior that cannot be forged anywhere else. It cannot happen in a comfortable season, it cannot happen in the years of visible success, and it cannot happen in the seasons when the evidence of favor is obvious, the path is clearly marked, and the confirmation arrives without even being asked for. It only happens in the long, quiet, disorienting wilderness seasons where the outer scaffolding comes down, and only what is genuinely constitutive of the person can remain. The first quality is a trust that is no longer circumstantial, the kind of faith that does not require favorable conditions to remain fully intact. Most people carry circumstantial faith, a faith that holds under the right conditions and fractures when those conditions disappear. There is no shame in that. It is simply the faith of a soul whose formation has not yet moved past the need for constant evidence. But the strongest warriors reach a point in the process where the trust becomes structural, where it does not shift when the evidence disappears because it was never dependent on the evidence to begin with. That trust is only built in the seasons where the evidence goes completely silent, and the choice to believe is made with nothing visible to support it, but the word that was spoken before anything began. The second quality is the clarity of calling that comes only through what is stripped away. Before the wilderness, most called people carry a composite vision of their assignment, made of genuine calling, genuine aspiration, and a significant portion of personal preference. The wilderness removes what is preference. It strips away the aspiration that was anchored in the ego rather than in the actual calling. What remains when the stripping is complete is the pure, unadorned purpose. It is the thing they were placed in the world to do that has nothing to do with what they imagined doing, and everything to do with what they were fundamentally designed for. The strongest warriors know their assignment with a specificity that cannot be argued with, because the wilderness burned everything else away and left only what is permanent. The third quality is the capacity to hold others in what they cannot hold themselves. The strongest warriors become containers for the suffering of the ones they are called to serve. This is not because suffering is sacred in itself, but because they have been in the darkness long enough to know that it eventually ends. They have been in the wilderness long enough to know that there is solid ground on the other side. That knowing, proven in the full weight of their own lived experience rather than borrowed from the testimony of another, becomes the substance of the hope they carry to others when those others are lost in the darkness. No technique or theology produces what personal, prolonged, survived wilderness produces in the bearer who emerges from it. The fourth quality is the irreversibility of the character that is formed. What the wilderness builds cannot be unbuilt by comfort, by success, by approval, or by any subsequent season of visible breakthrough. Most character formed in favorable seasons is brittle because it depends on the maintenance of the conditions that produced it. Wilderness character is structural and load-bearing. It remains the same in private as it does in public. It is the same under pressure as it is under favor. And it is the same in the next wilderness season as it is in the season of visible and celebrated reward. That is the character of a warrior who can be trusted with the full weight of what God assigns to them, because they have already proven that the weight will not change who they fundamentally are. The fifth quality is the authority of someone who has bled for what they believe. There is absolutely no substitute for this in any form of genuine spiritual leadership. Theory does not produce it. Education alone cannot confer it. And natural gifting, even of the highest order, cannot generate it. It only comes from the lived, embodied experience of someone who stayed faithful in the years when faithfulness cost everything and appeared to return nothing visible. That authority lands differently in a room than any other kind of authority. It changes the air when it is present. It speaks to something in other people that recognizes itself, that says without words, "This person has been where I am, and they did not leave." There is a way through this. There is a figure whose story has been preserved in the oldest living wisdom tradition in human history, whose formation maps with extraordinary precision onto the pattern of what you have walked through. His name was David. Before there was a throne recorded by anyone who would later write it down, before there was a battlefield that made it into any official history, and before there was a song composed and sung in the courts of a king who recognized what he carried, there was a field. It was a quiet, unobserved field where a young man tended animals and learned what most of the leaders who would come after him would never fully learn. He learned how to be faithful when no one was watching. He learned how to protect what has been entrusted to you when the mission feels entirely too small for the size of what you carry inside it. He learned how to fight and win in the dark, in secret, in ways that no audience will ever witness, validate, celebrate, or even know about. The lion and the bear that David encountered in that field were not random events in an unremarkable life. They were formation. They were the specific training ground for the giant who would arrive later, for the armies that would follow that giant, and for the weight of a kingdom that no one standing in that field on any of those ordinary days would have imagined him bearing. God was not wasting David in the wilderness. God was building the specific warrior that the specific assignment required. That formation could not be compressed, could not be rushed, and could not be made more efficient without destroying the very thing the process was designed to produce. You are at the completion of a David season. The field has done its work in you. The lions and bears of your formation, the battles you fought in the private hours of prayer and endurance, and the sustained faithfulness without visible reward have been met and overcome in ways that no audience witnessed and no celebration was organized around. Heaven watched every single one of those encounters. Heaven recorded every victory the world missed. What those encounters forged in you is precisely and specifically the warrior that the assignment now arriving requires. There is a truth that must arrive before the fullest layer of this revelation can open, a truth that is not about what happened to you, but about what was true about you before anything happened at all. The Spirit is speaking this clearly over your life in this moment. Before you had a name, before the day your parents gave you language to answer to, before you formed your first conscious memory, made your first decision, felt your first fear, or asked your first question, there was a record. There was a document sealed in the eternal architecture of creation that described who you would be, what you would carry, what you would endure, and what you would become when the enduring reached its completion. This is what the prophecy is. It is not a prediction made after observing the trajectory of a life and extrapolating forward. It is not a hope extended to someone who seems likely to succeed based on early indicators. It is a pre-established declaration made before any of the variables of your life had any influence over the outcome, because the one who made it does not see from within time. The God who knows the end from the beginning spoke over the seed of you, the not yet arrived and the not yet formed, and said this: I am sending a strongest warrior, and the life that unfolds from this moment will be the forge that produces what I have already seen. This is why the warfare came with such precision against your life. What carries the highest designation always draws the heaviest opposition. The darkness does not invest its resources in attacking what carries nothing worth contending for. The specificity and the persistence of what has come against your life across the years is confirmation of the specificity of what was written over it before the years began. I hear the Spirit saying this over you now, not a general word sent into the air, but a specific word for the soul that has been carrying this and arriving at this moment of confirmation. I saw you in the field when no one else saw you. I saw the lion you faced in private and the bear you overcame in silence. I recorded every victory the world missed, and every night you chose to stay faithful when leaving would have been understandable by any human accounting. When I looked at what the formation made of you, and when I assessed in full what the forge produced in you, I made a declaration that no season, no failure, no delay, and no voice that ever told you otherwise can reverse. You are my strongest warrior. The prophecy is real. It was real before you were, and it will be real long after every doubt you have ever entertained about it has been completely forgotten. Before this revelation reaches its full weight, and before everything in this message arrives at the point it was always moving toward, there is one final layer that will make the declaration land with the full authority it carries. What you have walked through has produced more than character and more than spiritual endurance. It has produced something at the level of the mind itself that the world did not have a framework to name or protect. Stay with me, because what comes next is the layer that connects everything above to everything you are designed to do going forward. Beneath the pattern of the longest formation, and beneath the accumulation of everything the fire built in you, there is a truth that is simpler and more absolute than any of what has come before it. You are not only called, you were commissioned. There is a distinction between those two words that deserves to be fully heard by you. Called means designated for a purpose. Commissioned means sent with authority, equipped for the mission, confirmed by the power that sent you, and given everything necessary to complete the assignment exactly as it was designed. The calling was given before your life began. The commission, which is the active sending with full authority attached, arrives at the completion of formation, and your formation is now complete. There are souls who carry a calling for a lifetime and never step fully into the commission. This is not because they lacked the gift, and not because the faith was absent, but because they were constantly waiting for something to change on the outside before they would accept what had already been sealed on the inside. They were waiting for the circumstances to confirm what the Spirit had already declared, and the weight of that waiting became their entire life. The prophecy was never less true about them. They simply never fully received it. Do not be that story. What God has built in you through everything you have walked through is not meant to remain in the formation space indefinitely. The warrior who was forged in the long and unvalidated seasons of hidden preparation has now reached the moment when the commission arrives. With it comes a truth about how the warrior functions at the fullest level of their capacity, and why the season of diminished output that felt like a reflection of your limitations was never about your limitations at all. Let me be plain with you for a moment in the way that truth deserves to be spoken when it is the most important kind. Here is the reality of your assignment.